Hello from Jihad and the World, a podcast that explores the intersection of Western and Islamic cultures. I am Mark Solinsky of Kensington Security Consulting, and today's episode will examine several cases, beginning with the sentencing of two men for planning to kill an Iranian American journalist. One of the would-be killers, Jonathan Lodholt, 37, was sentenced to 10 years for his role in an Iran-backed plot to kill the free-spirited Masih Alinejad, an Iranian-American journalist. 10 years is a pretty serious sentence, and this was after he confessed to his role in the plot. Another defendant, Carlisle Rivera, was also convicted, and he got 15 years. Well, in response to hearing these sentences, the intended victim, our local hero, cheered, "The women of Iran and I have won today, and you, the plotters, and your hated regime have lost. I am relieved that after nearly 3 years, moving more than 20 times between safe houses, the men hired by the Islamic Republic to kill me on U.S. soils have been found guilty. But make no mistake, the real masterminds of this crime are still empowered in Iran. I am waiting for the day when Ali Khamenei and his terrorist Revolutionary Guards face justice. They must be punished." Well, you waited successfully. Ali Khamenei is not around anymore. He faced justice and he was punished. Now, this is a lot of pretty hot talk from this feisty woman. Let's back up a little bit and look at the drama and the players there. All right. First, who is this perky Masih Alinejad? And why would anybody want to kill her? Let's take a look at her colorful website. According to her account, she worked in Iran for more than 10 years, covering their parliament as a journalist. He was forced to leave Iran in 2009, but she continued her activism abroad. She produced a multi-award-winning radio series about the victims of the 2009 crackdown on protests during the disputed presidential elections. In 2014, she created the My Stealthy Freedom movement through a Facebook campaign, now has about 1 million followers. This movement is the largest campaign for women in Iran. It empowers women to share photos of themselves without hijabs in protest of the country's strict dress codes. Masih and My Stealthy Freedom have been covered by well over 100 media organizations worldwide. She is a very vocal opponent of the regime in Iran and a proponent of women's rights there, in the Middle East, just about everywhere. But why would anybody want to kill her? Because she is a vocal opponent of the regime and a proponent of women's rights. That's exactly why. I have written about this extensively in Empire of Terror, which is still in print, but please trust me on this. Prominent critics of the regime frequently receive long prison terms if they are within the regime's reach. Sometimes they are sentenced to death, as was the case with Alinejad. Okay, so who are the convicts in this case? Well, one was Jonathan Lodholt, 37 years old. He's from Staten Island, and he was the one who got 10 years in prison. What was his background? Well, he was a former commercial transit driver. The FBI in charge explained, quote, Lodholt was tasked by the government of Iran to surveil Alinejad and eventually assassinate her, but the FBI arrested him first. Yeah, thank God. The prosecutors explained that Lodholt was driven by financial desperation, not by religion or ideology. He just needed the money, and he was driven by greed. And his conspirator, Carlisle Rivera, well, in January this year, Rivera offered an official courtroom apology, and he still received a 15-year federal prison sentence for his primary role in the state-sponsored conspiracy. I really don't know much about these guys, never heard of them, but they will be in a place where they don't have to worry about rent and get 3 meals a day. As for Miss Alinejad, the sentencing was certainly cathartic for her. The scrappy Alinejad proclaimed at the sentencing, quote, "I looked these men in the eyes, men who intended to silence me for defending women's freedom, and I am still standing." The journalist said that the verdict is, quote, "a victory for my fellow dissidents who continue to fight for freedom and refuse to be silenced." I wonder, it's spring now, and universities are ending up, and they have the ceremonies, but I wonder if she's been invited to any of them. In fact, I really looked up Nicholas Kristof, about whom we spoke quite a bit, and his recent statements about oversexed Israeli dogs raping people. Well, he was invited to speak all over the country at commencement addresses, graduation ceremonies, things like that, at his state in Oregon, really all over. And I guess he commands quite a fee. I don't know. Certainly, Miss Alinejad was available. You could just look up, and there's a website offering her services. She has an agent. I wonder why I really couldn't find any universities that offer to have her as a commencement address. Now, one university, the New College of New York, gave her an honorary degree. She has spoken on campuses. It's be pretty hard to keep her off. Generally, it's maybe a Republican group or a conservative group that forced the hand of the administration that let her talk. I'd be very surprised, and if I'm wrong, let me know, if a feminist organization asked her to come and funded it. My guess is that a number of these feminist organizations probably would have protested that. I can't prove that. Let's talk about it. Well, in any case, we certainly wish her well. And for whatever it's worth, Miss Alinejad, I wish you all the success in the world. In fact, I would be very honored to have you on my podcast. You are really a special and courageous woman. You are inspirational, and God bless you. All right, let's visit Germany with some good news and some troubling news. A newly released confidential audit confirms what many people suspected and some people knew, that until 2019, the German Foreign Office supported an aid organization with close ties to both Hamas and the Muslim Brotherhood, without knowing how these funds were actually being used. They didn't know. Well, maybe some of the bureaucrats didn't know exactly, but I'll bet a lot did. The audit concerned state funding for the organization Islamic Relief, which is purported to have ties to Hamas and the Brothers. Several consecutive German governments, including former Angela Merkel's second, third, and fourth cabinets, provided this group, the IRD, with millions of euros in funding. The IRD gained prominent supporters for its Meals for Orphans. Well, the IRD didn't fool Israel, and it didn't fool me. It banned it. And in 2019, the foreign ministry stopped funding the organizations. And let me tell you something, Germany will need this money to pay for its vast social services, particularly for migrants from the Middle East, North Africa, and Turkey. It costs German taxpayers $43 billion a year. The result? A strained financial system that extends across all elements of the social network. Public budgets are being stretched at every level of government. Housing markets, for example, are under intense pressure. Rent prices have surged and roads are more congested. Healthcare is another major pressure point. Hospitals continue to be chock-a-block with the new Germans, and waiting times for treatment have soared. The mass migration, mostly Muslims, this is the result of the mass migration that has been going on since 2015, when then Chancellor Angela Merkel cast open the gates to more than 1 million mostly Muslim migrants and confidently declared, forgive my German, Wir schaffen das. We can do this. Well, okay, Mutti Merkel, good luck. Are you doing it? In fact, what exactly are you doing? Well, let's go to another set of Germans, really two here. On a more positive note, the Petra Hemming Organization. Now, I can go on and on about Germany, and I will in future podcasts, but for now, let's take another look at Germany through a different lens, more specifically, some very special Germans. Let's drill down on some Germans who traveled to Israel to help. Help the Palestinians, yeah. Help Hamas, help the economy by buying kefiyehs, set up camp with Greta, and okay, forgive the sarcasm. These soft-spoken Germans went to help Israelis. This is the Petra Hemming Organizations. Until I read the article in the Jerusalem Post, I never heard of her or her organizations, which is sometimes co-led by Bashali Las. She is an Indian-German intercultural and geopolitical consultant who focuses on building bridges between Israel, India, and Germany. Now, I don't know exactly what that means. Whatever, there's very little drama associated with these women's or the activities they do. Germans fly to Israel, land, and offer to help out on the kibbutzim. They're assigned to a kibbutz. One group helped rebuild the kibbutz of Nir Oz that Hamas terrorists devastated on October 7th, 2023. So, these are just low-profile, warm-hearted Germans who went out there to help. And how do they do that? Once again, it's nothing ornate. It's not like the Greta flotillas. You just fly over there and show up. It sounds like a good idea to me. Okay, let's stay in Europe. Let's go to Britain. Well, George Gershwin wrote a sad song about old London town. One lyric went, I viewed the morning with much alarm. The British Museum had lost its charm. Quote. Cute lines, but maybe not so cute these days. If you had listened to my podcast, you may have noticed that a dominant theme that threads throughout the stories about Europe has to do with concession demand. This theme is the seesaw between Muslims and Europeans over demands and concessions. Demands and concession. A recent story we brought up that had to do with that plastic pig standing proudly in a window of a delicatessen in Padua, Italy. In this case, the deli's owner and his prized plastic pig stood their ground. Now, much more common is to concede to these demands in the name of social cohesion, public harmony, cultural sensitivity, and similarly worded babble. And now the British Museum? Well, you can decide. Recently, the British Museum indefinitely postponed a Jewish Culture Month event after learning, quote, registered attendees and individuals were intending to deliberately disrupt the event, unquote. Well, this talk, it was Ancient Israel and Judah in the British Museum, was postponed, quote, due to security concerns, unquote. The talk was to be given by Dr. Paul Collins, keeper of the Department of the Middle East. In a statement, the museum said that it was recently informed, and I'm quoting them here, a significant proportion of registered attendees were individuals intending to deliberately disrupt the event, preventing others from participating in good faith, and undermining the purpose of the program, unquote. So the decision was made, in their words, to protect the event, not to diminish it. Think about that for a moment. Okay. They continued, we will continue to support the Jewish Culture Month and remain committed to providing a space where history, culture, and scholarship can be explored openly, respectfully, and without disruption, unquote. So there you have it. They will, in their words, postpone the event to protect it. All right, okay. When is it going to be scheduled? I couldn't find an exact date. How about you? Let's take a look at the wording. This is rank concession talk. Quote, the decision was made to ... Notice the passive voice. Who made the decision? Decisions don't make themselves. People do. Bureaucrats do. Leaders do. I do. Weak wording. Yeah. Also, let's take a look at the substance of the speech. The event was postponed, probably canceled, to avoid disruption. Were there no alternatives? How about making it clear that disruptors would be arrested? How about threatening punishment? Suggesting that there was no practical and humane alternative to canceling the event was a lie. There most certainly was. It was a lie and a concession. So, if at first you don't concede, lie again. Clever, I did make that up. Well, kind of. In any case, I promise you that this will not be the last demand and concession. I think there could be a good term paper or a master's thesis on the general topic of demand and concession patterns in Britain, in Europe. You may want to narrow it down to museums or public events. If you have an idea, send it to me. Silinsky@yahoo.com, SILINSKY@yahoo.com. And I promise you that I will get back to you. All right, we want to take a very brief look at Nicholas Kristof. He came out and he, in many ways, tried to and did preempt the release of Israel's 300-page study of the Hamas attacks on October 7, 2023. The timing was not coincidental. I think he hoped to and did derail any kind of mass recognition of it. And it was really peppered with all sorts of accounts of Israeli atrocities and deviant sexual habits of man and dog. Do you remember this? He quoted people who said that dogs penetrated them. Yeah, I don't believe that. And what were the sources? The sources were heavily, not entirely, but heavily, on an extremist non-governmental organization whose founder and chairman, Rama Abdu, was caught lying repeatedly about Israel. He seems to be obsessed with sexual claims, and he offered on a website a map of registered sex offenders living in Israel, as was a hoax. But it didn't deter Christoph from casting Abdu as a credible source. There are others too, but Christoph seems to rest his judgments on proven liars. And regrettably, a lot of people take him seriously. All right. Israel has said that they would bring a suit against him. I think it'd be a very difficult suit, unfortunately, but it would be a heck of a suit. Maybe things will be brought up in discovery if it goes that far. All right, one final thing before I leave you. There are two movies I saw just the other day. They were about nuclear warfare, how they affect two American towns hit by Soviet nuclear bombs. This was 1980. I think they both came out in 83, so that was a busy year for nuke movies. I don't want to make light of it. They were very well acted. I recommend them because the issue of nuclear weapons is not going away. In the 50s, there was a campaign against nuclear or nuclear disarmament. Then the 80s, there was a resurgence. People were concerned about Ronald Reagan. Okay, and they made some of these movies. Some people thought that the movies were a bit alarmist at the time. I encourage you to see them because they are well done, they are well acted, and my guess, not that much has changed with the effects of a nuclear bomb over American cities. It's going to be a big, messy thing. So, one of the movies I recommend is called The Day After, and it has some very fine stars. Jason Robards shines in that. Some other less well-known actors who were very young made their debut in the movie. It's a bleak and harrowing production, as you can imagine, given this substance here. There's another movie here, Testament. Testament. It showcased Jane Alexander, who's a very fine actress. And boy, I tell you, I really would like to have a long conversation about just about anything with Jane Alexander. As I remember, she was not only an artist, an actress, but a real thinker, too. Well, the violence here is less graphic, but the plot and the outcome are hauntingly similar. Well, in this greater drama of nuclear catastrophes, there is a new actor, and that is Iran. Okay, this concludes the video cast. Thanks for watching. Nothing in the video represents the official position of the United States government. Until next time, goodbye from Kensington Security Consulting, and thank you for listening. Out here.